quote, big deal that both the President and the Speaker were referencing. And the big deal included spending reductions in year one and over the next 10 years. It included some modifications to some entitlements, Medicare. And it also included some tax reform. It ultimately did not prove fruitful. Final agreement could not be reached by the two. So at a point about a week and a half before the August 2nd deadline, the Speaker announced that he was going to begin negotiations with his Senate colleagues. And that was a challenge, I think, for members in the House and the Senate, I think for the country too. In the meantime, a group of us in the House of Representatives decided to co-sponsor, co-author a bill called Cut, Cap, and Balance. I'm a co-sponsor of that bill. I think that that was the most appropriate way forward to meet the, not demands, but the suggestions of the rating agencies, which we all met with. And the rating agencies said, you have a severe spending problem in this country. You've got to get it under control. And therefore, any kind of agreement that is reached has to be sufficient in the short term and the long term. And that communication was also conveyed to the administration and Secretary Geithner. And I took that, and with that framework in mind, I went to work on Cut, Cap, and Balance. Cut, Cap, and Balance is very simple. It cuts spending in year one. It caps spending over the next 9 years. And it required a balanced budget amendment. Now, I've heard from a lot of people over the course of the last week. Some very much support the balanced budget amendment. Some don't like it at all. The reason that I decided to move forward with it was I feel very strongly that we have to balance our budget in this country. We've got to live within our means. We ask individuals to do it. We ask small business owners to do it. We ask our municipalities to do it. We ask our state to do it. It's usually not a pretty process. It can be a painful process. Making reductions in spending that people have relied on can be emotional. I went through it as a mayor, and now I'm going through it as your representative. And I take those decisions very seriously because I understand and appreciate some of the impacts that they make on our communities. That piece of legislation was brought to the floor. It passed. Majority with Republicans. We had 5 Democrats who also supported it. And that same evening, it was tabled in the Senate. So the second bill that was brought forward in the House was referred earlier as the Boehner bill, or now the Budget Control Act. It was a framework of Cut, Cap, and Balance, but the spending reductions were smaller. The balanced budget amendment was what required in order to increase the debt ceiling. And that could not obtain the requisite votes in the House, so the vote was pushed off until a bill was drafted that could pass the House. And the goal that I think the Speaker had was to try to find something that wouldn't just pass the House, but pass the Senate, and then get an opportunity for the President to sign something into law. And the idea was to do this certainly before August 2nd. But it was clear after Cut, Cap, and Balance was not taken up in the Senate that we were going to come down to the wire on any agreement that was going to be reached. So this bill did pass the House. It was then tabled in the Senate, and we went into House and Senate negotiations. And what came out of it was this two-tiered approach. Spending reductions 5% higher than the debt ceiling can be raised in both the first tier and the second tier. The second tier, we have a committee of 12, 6 members of the House, 6 members of the Senate, who most of which have been named today. Not all of them, but most of the members have been named today. And their responsibility is to come up with about $1.5 trillion in cuts in order to raise the debt ceiling about $1.2 trillion on the second phase. And if they don't come to an agreement, then through sequestration, automatic spending reductions, there will be spending reductions across the board made. In addition, the legislation requires a vote in the House and the Senate, not a vote in order to raise the debt ceiling, but a vote on a balanced budget amendment. that amendment is being crafted, and I suspect sometime before the end of this year, the House and the Senate will take up that vote. The committee was named today. They're going to get to work probably in the next couple of weeks. They'll outline the framework and the timeline, and they'll hopefully come up with something that 7 people can agree to, and it comes to the House and the Senate for a vote. It's got to pass the House and the Senate in order for the President to raise the debt ceiling. In addition to that, there's nothing that stops the House from continuing doing work on any number of measures. The Senate can take up any of the pieces of legislation that have been passed by the House. Most people have been talking about focusing on jobs. Now, we do have a 9.1% unemployment rate. We've had 28 months of 8% unemployment rate or higher in this country. A lot of people are hurting. About 15 million people are out of work, and far more who are underemployed. So our hope is that we can find some agreement on policy that comes out of Washington that will allow for job creators to feel some sense of predictability and start hiring again, establish some consumer confidence so we can all feel better about the situation and start spending some of our dollars. But I think it's going to take some time, as Chairman Bernanke said yesterday. So I hope that we can continue doing the very best we can to move this country forward. It's going to be challenging at times, but I'm certainly up to the challenge, and I'm looking forward to, after spending some time in New Hampshire, to go back to DC and do everything I can. But I also want to hear from you through the course of this period of time. You can go to the website and send me an email. You can give us a phone call. It is important that I hear from each and every one of you. And I want to hear from your friends and your neighbors. It takes a little time, but the best way I can represent you is when I'm here and listen to what you have to say. Consider that when we bring legislation forward, and continue to do that as I spend time in DC. And we'll continue to do those telephone town halls so I can, as we're considering legislation, get your opinions. Now, that being said, I'd love to try to answer as many questions as I can. So with that, we can start the questions.
Thank you, Congressman. The way we're going to do a question and answer, everybody looks where we're having you sign in earlier, and we'll try to go according to the list. Those people who indicated they wanted to ask a question, we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can, as many topics as we can. If we don't, though, however, the Congressman does stay around a little while afterwards, so you can certainly try to follow up with him after that. I'll call out your name and what your question was going to be about, and then so if you can kind of come as close to the center of the aisle as possible, and then you can ask the Congressman your question. First one will be Joe Brava. Had a question regarding Medicare.
Thank you for taking my question. Almost 3% of New Hampshire senior citizens are covered by Medicare Part D. Part D is a very successful program that has come in 40% below projections. So my question is, do you support or oppose adding price controls or mandatory rebates to Part D?
Medicare Part D has actually been, we actually have talked about this quite a bit in the Budget Committee, and it's been lauded by both sides as a success for the reasons you identified and outlined. That according to the CBO projection, it came in 41% under cost. It seems to be a program that a lot of seniors, not just here in New Hampshire and across the country, utilize and benefit. And I don't expect that there is any reduction or change to that component of Medicare.
Okay. The next question from Zane Nog, I believe is the name, also regarding Medicare.
I'm 89. I'm 80 years old. I had a triple bypass 19 years ago. I went on Medicare, and with my supplement, I paid hardly anything. So I hope that you will work for Medicare to keep it as it is, and if you've got some changes in mind, I'd like to hear about it because I have that's up in the air. It's a great question, but it works for me. I hope it stays that way. If you want to cut some money for the wars. That's another question.
Thanks, Zane, for the question. In the budget proposed and passed by the House, there are some reform proposals to Medicare. First thing I would say is that not one of them affects anyone who is 55 or older. What it does do is take into consideration the Medicare trustees report from this May that provides three, I think, pretty critical facts. The three facts are this. If nothing is done to Medicare, it goes bankrupt in 12 years. Secondly, we have 10,000 new individuals per day coming on the rolls of Medicare, which means it will about double from 35 to 70 million users within that same time frame. And finally, that we have, unfortunately, at record numbers, physicians who are no longer accepting Medicare patients. So this is a real problem. This is a real problem. This is according to the Medicare trustee report. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has similar data in their reporting as well. We also, in the last 6 weeks or so, brought the actuaries for Medicare in front of the Budget Committee to extrapolate some of this data and try to figure out what is the best approach to preserve Medicare and ensure that everybody has access to it. Now, the trustees won't give you a position on how to, quote, fix it. They are just there as a nonpartisan trustees to tell you what the facts are. I think that we as a Congress probably should have made that report a far more public issue before trying to fix or solve the problem. That's probably a mistake that we made. We didn't tell the country why we were trying to solve the problem. Nobody knew what the problem was. So everywhere I go, and if you want to get that report, I'd be happy to send it to you so everyone can take a look at it. But that is the fundamental problem that this Congress and future Congresses face. I mean, imagine if we knew those three facts 3 months ago. Imagine if I said, would you like me as your representative to fix it? Or would you like me to let it go bankrupt? I think most people would say, well, fix it. So the proposed solution in the budget, which only passed the House, certainly open to amendment, open to other ideas, and I'd be encouraged to see that dialogue and debate, because this is a very emotional issue for people. What we proposed was looking at the growth rate, which is 8%, and trying to bring it down to what we can afford, which is 2%. And the way we did that is modify the program, not for anybody who's 55 and older. So again, you're 55 and older, when you receive Medicare, it's the existing program as it is today. The modifications would affect me.
You have a good one already.
Well, this proposal is actually modeled after the Congressional Health Plan. We heard a lot from people that said, why can't we have health insurance like members of Congress? Well, this plan is modeled after the plan that members of Congress get.
Who's going to pay for it?
The government. It comes from government money. So the plan is that when you're about 64 years old, you get a booklet. And again, this would be, so for me, when I turn 64, I get a booklet from the federal government that says, here are your different government-approved options for health insurance. You get to pick and choose which